Hi, John. How are you today?
Oh, well, thanks, Claire.
Good. We have a really interesting topic to cover today, ASIC versus RI advice. Tell us a little bit about the case.
Right, the case came up. ASIC took RI advice to court about 2 years ago now. In May this year, the verdict came out talking about what had actually happened, along with a nice statement of facts as to the actual problems that have occurred within RI advice that have led to the case happening.
Great. Well, we'll get into that in more detail later, but first of all, tell us a little bit about RI advice. Who are they and how are they set up?
So RI advice is a financial advisory firm. And what they do is they have their company, they have a platform that they run their products through, and underneath they have about 300 independent organisations that are called authorised representatives. These ARs go out and deal with clients on behalf of RI advice, selling RI advice products, but they are not employed per se by RI advice.
Okay, and these 300 representatives are distributed across Australia, or?
Yeah, they're distributed across the country. And they take product and then leverage their relationships into clients to go and distribute that to the end users.
Okay. So tell us what actually happened to RI advice. How did they get breached?
So RI advice in a period from 2014 to 2020 were breached a total of 9 different times in generally different ways. There were a couple that were email takeovers, but each time the email account got taken, it was subtly different. There was a brute force hacking attack, 2 of them in fact, where attackers just found a way to attack the machines directly and keep going until they got passwords. There was a ransomware email attack where someone mailed in a link, somebody clicked on it, and hey presto, the machine was compromised with ransomware. So there's a variety of methods used over quite a long time.
Okay, so quite a set of unpleasant things have happened to RI Group,
Yes.
but not unusual. What was it that made ASIC sit up and take notice?
So ASIC were after a number of things from this. One of them was they wanted to establish a precedent. What they've done now is shown that under Corporations Act, Section 1912, organisations can be taken to court and successfully sued for not taking due care with their organisations. That's one thing they managed to achieve. The other one was to put a shot across the bow of many organisations in financial services and show that you can't simply ignore the cybersecurity responsibilities. You can't hand them over to a third party. You can't pretend they don't exist. Where the responsibilities were passed onto the ARs, there was very little guidance given, at least initially, on how those IRs must behave.
So what did RI Advice do in response to the cyber events? Did they take no action? Did they take not enough action? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. That was one of the other points that ASIC made in the case, was that every time RI advice responded, they tended to respond to the particular incident. So they would clean up that particular event, but they were very, very slow in turning that into general guidance for all of the ARs, sometimes taking significant times to get that out to everybody as action that they should take. So they were seen very much as patching the problem, but not actually solving the root cause.
And did they have any particular defense for that stance? Was it that they didn't have the resources as a group to tackle that in an appropriate way? Were there competing priorities? Why do you think RI responded the way that they did?
Well, there was nothing given in the case that clearly pinpointed where the problem was, but in similar corporate structures before, I've seen problems where there's conflict between the business wanting to bring ARs on, wanting to keep the cost down for ARs, wanting to leverage the ARs to get to the clients, and the rest of the business wanting to put requirements upon the ARs for due diligence, for conformance, for reporting, which of course increase costs and increases delays. So sometimes there can be a lot of tension in that sort of space. And I could imagine that you would get the similar sort of thing in a structure such as we see in RI Advice Group. Not sure why that happened. You could get tension between wanting to bring the ARs on and make it latent, easy and profitable for them versus putting some cybersecurity requirements upon them that they may see as simply increasing their costs without actually bringing much return.
Yes, that's kind of interesting. There are other similarly structured companies may be having to take a closer look at what they're doing in this space. What types of organizations, John, do you think might be impacted by this ruling and should be sitting up and taking notice?
Yeah, very much so. So what ASIC have managed to establish here is the precedent case, and they are now free to go out and take anyone in their jurisdiction to task for not applying what they consider to be proper cybersecurity controls over their environment. ASIC have also not laid out particularly clearly exactly what those controls are. We have some broad statements, some sweeping statements, but we don't have a definitive set of guides from them on what they consider to be best practice.
So a little bit scary then. We have this landmark ruling on the one hand with clear implications for RI advice, and on the other, maybe not enough information from ASIC on how we need to be prepared if we're in that situation adequately for us not to end up in the same place that RI advice have. So what advice do you have, John, for anyone who might be concerned?
Yeah, it's a concerning situation to be in. What we are doing with a number of clients is working through the outcomes of the case, looking at the gaps that were open, and then measuring those gaps against those clients to see, are they exposed to the same sort of problems? If they are, we're putting together a plan in order to close those gaps. So at least we can say, well, we don't have a definitive set of steps that must be taken. We've measured ourselves against the existing problems that ASIC saw and fixed any of the problems that we see. So should ASIC come knocking, we have a chance to say, yes, we've looked at the problems that you exposed before and addressed them. Of course, that's got to be seen in the bigger context of overall compliance.
And where should people go, John, if they feel like they need to take action on this?
There's a number of sources online. If you're concerned about this, come and talk to us at Revio Cybersecurity, and we'll help you make sure you've protected what matters most.
When you look at this case in detail, John, what is the one thing that RI Advice Group didn't do that led them to the outcome that they're experiencing now?
So probably the shortfall would come down to not establishing clear guidelines at the beginning on what was expected from the ARs from a cybersecurity point of view, and then not having a way of measuring their compliance. So a policy and a process of regular audit to make sure they complied with it would have probably avoided most of the problems they were having.
Okay. And one piece of advice for anyone in this situation today?
Well, the thing we always advocate is learn from the mistakes of others. RI Advice have managed to blaze the trail for you. They've pointed out what not to do. Learn from it and make sure that you're in order.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, John.
Thank you.